I'm Dustin Cormier, and this is the How to Rock Astrology audio series. The information in this recording is copyrighted by Dustin Cormier, 2015, all rights reserved, except where noted in the recording. The following information on ascendant or rising signs comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Guidelines to interpreting the ascendant. Although the ascendant is of deep and pervasive importance for each individual, there is no denying that it must be related to the rest of the chart, and especially to the sun sign, in order to understand it thoroughly for a particular person. The sun, after all, is the core identity, the very center of the consciousness, the way we assimilate much of our experience, whereas the ascendant, although it varies in importance from person to person, is not as central to the person's nature. It shows, among other things, the approach to life, but the sun shows life itself. The ascendant must serve the purposes, values, and creative goals of the sun for the individual to function happily and fully. A useful tool for understanding how a person's ascendant and sun sign interact is to compare the elements of the two factors. For example, a Cancer sun sign person with a fire sign rising is usually far more extroverted, forcefully expressive, and confident than a Cancer sun individual with, say, a more conservative, self-protective earth sign rising. For another example, an air sign sun person with a water sign rising may appear much more emotional than he or she really is, whereas a water sign sun person with an air sign rising may appear far more detached and less emotional than he or she really is. It should be pointed out that people are often relatively unaware of their ascendant nature as compared to their sun sign. In that sense, the ascendant is a factor that can be consciously developed further over time and consciously utilized to aid one's self-expression. I've known people who were relieved to find what their rising signs were, since it finally gave them a way of identifying a very deep but only semi-conscious tendency in themselves. In some cases, the qualities and abilities symbolized by the ascendant were just beginning to emerge, and learning the astrological keys to this factor helped personal development greatly. I should emphasize here that perhaps more than with most other factors in the chart, the early environment can encourage or suppress the expression of the ascendant's energies, since it is a primary channel with which one interacts with the outer world. The reader should view the following comparative evaluations as guidelines and as questions to explore, rather than as rigid statements of absolute truth. Taurus Modality or Quadruplicity. The Taurus Modality is fixed, the determined energy mode. There are exactly 4 of these willful, determined signs in the zodiac belonging to the fixed modality. These include Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus, and they all share similar characteristics. These 4 signs are better able to focus and concentrate than the other 8 signs. They share a deliberateness and a powerful ability to focus and endure, but they also share the challenge of avoiding stubbornness and close-minded rigidity. The element of the ascendant. The element of the ascendant reveals the quality of energy flow directly vitalizing the physical body and the overall approach to life. Fire or air signs rising tend to conduct energy, encouraging active self-expression and dynamic expenditure of energy. Earth or water rising signs tend to conserve and resist the flow of vital energies, and hence indicate self-containment, sometimes self-repression, and the tendency of living within oneself. Earth signs rising, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. A matter-of-fact outlook. Focus on the material world and conservative attitudes can inhibit imagination, which is then allowed to limit the person's options and/or restrain spontaneous self-expression. Steadiness and reliability are often well developed and highly valued by self and others. Practicality and inborn patience give more tolerance for routine than other ascendants show. A systematic approach, usually along established channels, is the most common method of expressing oneself. Taurus Ascendant or Taurus Rising. Methodical, controlled, measured movements that often seem like holding a pose. deep dislike of being rushed, strong aesthetic and pleasure-motivated streak in the nature. Can be lazy or steadily productive, but still insists on doing everything in one's own way and at one's own pace. Venus's sign position strongly affects how ambitious or dynamic the person is. Taurus Sun more often seems lazy than Taurus Ascendant, probably because the Sun is the essential vital energy, and Taurus Sun also seems to be more predictably possessive. Both want to enjoy everything they do, and therefore they refuse to rush anything lest they interfere with the pleasure they are deriving from the here and now. An extremely physical and sensual approach to life, and a strong need for closeness, affection, and security. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's classic text, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Taurus on the Ascendant. Strong, stable, and stubborn. Slow in reflexes. Quiet until pushed too far, then there is trouble. Passive personality, quiet and unassuming as a rule. Very possessive and fixed in convictions. Resources and possessions, whether people or finances, are very important. Cannot be pushed, but can be coaxed. Cannot be driven, but can be led. Practical. Good financial sense, and they're affectionate. Taurus Ascendant people are good workers, but cannot be hurried. Difficulty with studies due to a slow pace of mind. Inclined to put on weight, for there is a love of good food. Short, thick neck with square type of body. Non-aggressive, patient, and long-suffering. Can be unreasonable and prejudiced when pushed too far. Jealousy must be conquered if Venus or Mars is afflicted. The following information comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. Taurus, the banker, the beast of burden, is steady as she goes. People with Taurus rising are deliberate, focused, and don't like to be rushed. As children, they're generally slower about things, absolutely stubborn, grouchy when hungry, and not easily roused from sleep. Into maturity, these characteristics remain. These people are bothered by impracticality and are sometimes vain and a little grumpy. They need their animal comforts. They're keep it simple stupid types, potential pouty faces, and sticks in the mud. They're usually generous though, and always steady with their efforts. They often say, "Don't crowd me, get out of my way, I know what I'm doing." Physical type. Broad shoulders, low voice, a broad smile with lots of teeth, possibly a plodding gait, with a bit of clumsiness in the feet. Favorite colors? Pastels. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's Astrology, A Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. The significance of the Sun and the Sun sign in astrology. The symbol of the Sun in astrology is a circle with a dot in the middle. This is a very deep occult spiritual symbolism. The circle represents the eternal self that did not start here and does not finish here on earth. The dot in the middle represents the divine spark at the center of every living cell, the light which lighteth every man with which cometh into the world. It is the point of light at the center of every living cell. In the blueprint, the sun represents the main expression of the individual, the heart and core of beingness. The sun has a different effect on individuals born at different times of the year. According to the sign and house in which the sun is placed, we are able to judge the general vitality and physique, the qualities of leadership, and the individual's ability to succeed in life. In a personal chart, the sun represents the basic drive for significance, the will, male relationships and female charts, especially with the father, vital energy coming from the etheric levels and prana, fuel on which the total personality operates, urge for power, constitutional strength, and finally, a powerful sun means very great power to do and to be. Keywords of the sun: will, individuality, spirit. The sun is the significator of the spirit in man, the beingness or isness of life. It rules the basic drive for significance, the will to be. Physically, the sun is the sustainer of life, giver of light, heat, and energy. More than anything else in the chart, it shows the will, man's highest expression. Its aspects show deep character traits, the chief ambitions. It needs aspects to the planets for strength of expression in the horoscope. As the sun moves through the signs, its return to the sign of its exaltation, Aries, the eastern horizon, marks the beginning of the astrological year. Springtime brings the release of a new cycle of life. As the sun moves through the houses, its return to the eastern horizon is the beginning of the astrological day, sunrise. The sun sign in its element. The following information comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. The sun sign's element is usually dominant in considering the overall psychology of a person. This is so because the sun sign's element reveals the attunement of one's basic vitality, identity, and power of self-projection, as well as the fundamental quality of his or her consciousness. The element of one's sun sign reveals the basic inner force motivating everything we do. The element of the sun sign also gives insight into how any individual sees life itself and what expectations they have of the life experience. Leo Sun. Leo is a fire sign. These are the common characteristics of people born with the sun in fire signs. Basically motivated by inspirations and aspirations. Recharges energy through vigorous, physically demanding activity and by pursuing new visions for the future. Interpretive guidelines for Sun in Leo. Expresses self with warmly radiant vitality and constant need to be noticed. Creative energy is colored by a sense of drama and bigness. Motivated by a need to be recognized for one's generosity. Radiates confidence and encouragement to others. Can vitalize any enterprise. Pride is a dominant personality characteristic. Heartfelt but childlike, and emotions are always at work. This final article comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. Leo born around midnight. Leo with Taurus rising. Here come some intense people who need to lighten up and not deal with life as though everything is black or white. They're too much my way or the highway and have too little willingness to compromise. Both Leo and Taurus are fixed signs, so they'd feel their disappointments too deeply. Leo's pride and Taurus's determination make for a particularly dependable, focused person. These folks are entirely too serious about everything. They're dignified, but sometimes aloof. And they're resistant to change, wanting to hold on to the status quo. They need to move along to avoid becoming unapproachable sad sacks. Leos with Taurus rising are confident and competent enough to do just about anything they set their mind to, but they're at their best and most satisfied in practical pursuits, unless they find a way to exploit their potentially beautiful, articulate, baritone voice. They're proficient in vocations that revolve around banking or real estate, but will probably be most happy when they're self-employed. It might flourish when they're running a small business and calling their own shots, but their challenge is to avoid being too demanding of their employees, chasing them away with a bullish intolerance. Their most positive traits, from their Leo magnanimity and generosity to their Taurus bottom-line practicality, can be compromised if they go overboard with the pouty-faced, stick-in-the-mud, grumpy stump side of their Taurus personality. And with Leo's tendency toward self-involvement, this sort of thing can easily happen if they don't stay flexible, open-minded, attentive, and accommodating to their moods. Although open-mindedness and flexibility are sometimes near impossible for them to maintain. Leos born around midnight aren't easily impressed with anything. They demand excellence both as professionals and as consumers. They insist on a quality effort from employees and colleagues, as well as from themselves. They can actually be quite hard on themselves, even when they're doing a better job than everyone else. But if these Leos can temper their intense seriousness and use their generosity as a basis for growing their people skills, they'll become the most valued members of any team. On the other hand, if their demanding ways become little more than blatant intolerance, they'll find themselves considered too difficult to work with. Taurus, the banker, likes to keep things simple, but while keep it simple is practical and useful, it's not all that celebrative. So these Leos need to remember to go with the flow, to enjoy the party, and have a good time. If they'll lighten up and move along, they just might end up enjoying themselves.